So, Brazil just got eliminated by Peru. Yes, with a handball goal. But even though Dunga and the usual insane people like Brazil stats that said being eliminated from the Copa America is okay because we have the important matches in September. He is referring to the qualifiers for the World Cup. Okay. Um, so, let's explain once again what happens down here. What's the deal with the Brazilian FA and why, especially whoever they choose as the next coach won't make a difference. Okay. So, Brazilian football, as everything related to national teams, to national teams, it depends on a generation. You need to be luck with the generation of players you have. Brazil has been blessed with several straight generations of great players. Okay, so when we won the first World Cup in '58, we have Didi, Vava, Garrincha, and Pelé as a youngster. We won. In '62, Garrincha was at his peak, Pelé injured, won again. '66, even though we still had most of these talents, the dictatorial government, the military government, decided to have three teams instead of one, and then out of these three teams, they would choose one to go to the '66 World Cup in England, and you can imagine how that worked out. Failed. In '70, even though the coach sucked, because Zagallo, even though he was a legendary player who played at both '68 and '62 as a winger, a skilled player as well, he really doesn't. He isn't someone as Cruijff or Tele Santana, as I'm gonna talk in a few minutes. So the thing was, he had the best generation we ever had. When you have a midfielder with Clodoaldo, Rivelino, Gerson, then you have Jairzinho and Pelé up front, you really don't need to know much about football to win, right? And he did. So in '74 it was about the same team, but Pelé was no longer there, and they lost to Cruyff's Netherlands. That was normal. In '78 was the World Cup in Argentina, where Argentina had that match. I think it was against Peru, wasn't it? I think it was against Peru. The one they had to win 6-0, and they did, so that's why Brazil got eliminated. So it's hard to judge. In '82, okay, now these are the two World Cups that it matters because I have to talk about Zico one of these days because Zico, if the Ballon d'Or was given to players back then, remember, South American players started to be eligible for the Ballon d'Or after '94 or '95. So Zico should have won the 1980 Ballon d'Or, for example, because he won the Libertadores, won the Brazilian Championship, and he won the Continental Cup against Liverpool. And for example, in the Libertadores final, he scored all four goals because it was like two or three matches. And then on the Continental final against Liverpool, he gave two assists. And the third goal was like he hit a free kick and hit the post or the keeper saved and someone scored from the rebound. So Zico was the best player in the world back then, which means not only did we have uh, the best player in the world or one of the best players in the world, because remember back then you had Platini and Maradona and Zico, so yeah, those three. And what happened was, besides having Zico and a great generation with Socrates and Careca, was a great forward. He used to play with Maradona. He was Maradona's main partner back in Napoli. For the first time, Brazil had a coach who was a visionary. He's the best Brazilian coach of all times, and that's Tele Santana. You know, he, as usual, we were only lucky to get him because Brazil was starting to make the shift from the military government to the democratic one elected. And so we got him. He was the best coach, was winning titles, him, and we got him. And this idea that you have of the beautiful Brazilian football, it didn't come from 1970 because if you can watch, there are matches from the 1970 World Cup available online. It was low. 1970 it was low. So in 82, especially in 82, Brazil played beautiful football. You know, you had superb players all around the pitch. They want to focus on this quality. You know, when you have Gerson, when you have Rivelino, when you have Zico, when you have Socrates, when you have uh, even Junior as a left back, who's a great player, that's a different team. And then in 82, the team was really unlucky, uh, but you know, kind of naive the way they lost to Italy because people do not remember, but Brazil could have tied that game and they would have went through, but they kept attacking and Paulo Rossi scored. That happened. And then in 86, the same idea was kept, even though the team was harshly beaten down here, but it was the same idea, the same coach, and then we lost again. This time to France on penalties, Platini, and then, then that's when stuff started to happen. That's the reason I'm recording this. I was born in 1987. Okay, so I didn't see 82 and 86. From 1988, that's when someone named Ricardo Teixeira started to show up here. He was someone who married João Avelange's daughter, and he started to gain more and more power. And he's the most greedy person, one of the most greedy people you'll find in world football. We know how Sepp Blatter is, but João Avelange and Teixeira, they are the masters. They are different. So their focus, who has never been, but you know, they still cared a bit, ceased to be the team and started to be on money. So leave this good football philosophy behind, don't care about it, and let's focus on winning. Because if you win, we'll get the money. And when we have the money, we can do whatever the fuck we want with it, and that's the plan. And they started. So in 1990, they chose the worst coach Brazil has ever had, and even worse than Filipão and Dunga, believe that. His name was Sebastião Lazzaroni, and he was the most defensive, like ugly football you can see. The 1990 World Cup is the worst Brazil team of all time, including 2014, who lost the 7-1 match to Germany, okay? And so they went on. They continued, the same people ruling. And then in 94, they got Zagallo as the coach. As I told you, Zagallo isn't a Tele Santana. He may be the person with the most World Cups in history, you know, but because he has like four, two as a player and two as a coach, 70 and 94. He won the World Cup in 94. But remember, Romario basically won it by himself. People like to say, no, he had Bebeto. No, fuck it. Romario won it by himself. He scored 5 goals and he gave 2 assists. Bebeto was responsible for like 3 or 4 goals in the World Cup. They had Romario even though they played ugly football, you know, 2 or 3 CDMs. The thing that sums up the 1994 team is that Rai was the captain. Rai is an attacking midfielder. He's a number 10. And they removed Rai from the squad, and that's when Dunga became a starter and became the captain, because Rai was the captain. So when you change from Rai to Dunga, you know you don't care about good football. But they won. And then 98, Zagallo remained as coach. Of course, he had won the World Cup, and whatever happened at that final with Fat Ronaldo, we lost. And then 2002, remember, 2002 people don't remember this, but in 2002, Luxemburgo, he had assembled that team. You know, that team was his. But I think he lost the Copa America or something like that in 2001. So I don't remember right now. So he had assembled this team, and Filipão got this team and won. Yet again, Rivaldo was the main player, remember. Rivaldo was directly responsible to as many goals as Ronaldo was. Okay? Rivaldo scored 5 goals and gave 3 assists on the World Cup. Ronaldo scored 8. So even though you like to say because he was the star and Nike talked about him, but without Rivaldo there is no fifth World Cup. And even they were playing ugly, they won. But then this started to catch up because, as I told you, Brazil was only winning and only being successful because of the generations. And in 2006, it dried up. It dried up. And the thing about 2006 that I found really, really funny is that it was the opposite. It was noticeable it was starting to dry up, but actually you had like in paper the best team we've ever had since 1986. Because when you think of a team with Fat Ronaldo, Adriano, Kaká, Ronaldinho, even Robinho, hell, even Robinho, and then like you have other players like Juninho and so on. That team, talent-wise, you know, if these players were at the best, if these players were professional, you could say, oh, they were going to win, okay, because the talent that I'm listing is insane. But who was the coach? Parreira. You know, Parreira is the guy who like during the World Cup, he said, the Brazilian FA is the Brazil that works. The, an institution that its last president is currently in jail in New York. The current one does not travel around the world. For example, right now Brazil has been eliminated by Peru. Do you think the Brazilian FA president is there with the team? No, he can't travel because if he travels, he'll be arrested by the DOJ, the Department of Justice from the United States. So that's the kind of people. So in 2006, as I told you, the talent was there, but I have talked about this before when I talk about Neymar. Brazilian players have this thing where they shine for a while and then they completely vanish. And all of these players, they were starting to vanish. Even though Ronaldinho had just won our second Champions League against Arsenal in Paris, he wasn't the same. And then Ronaldo was fat. And Adriano was starting his mental issue problems. And Kaká didn't really do much. And all of these guys. And then you add that to a bad coach, shit happens. Then Zidane happened. And we lost. And then it starts to reach peak, Because the thing about Dunga, when people like me and most people, when we say we hate Dunga, is not only because he's an arrogant asshole who looks at looks at the Argentinian bench to the players and the coaches and do the use Nif cocaine gesture, that the worst kind of mentality you can find in a Brazilian, this insane hatred they have for Argentines. But the thing is, he has never been a coach, When they've hired Dunga, he wasn't a famous coach. He hadn't won anything. And he indeed was lucky enough to win the Copa America. And I think he won the Confederation. I don't care. I think he did won the Confederation Cup. I think they did, right, against the United States. So he won the Copa America and the Confederations Cup. Copa America, okay, he won it, fuck it. But remember, that relies again on the generation. He had a good one. Confederation Cup, I don't even know why people still care about this thing, because it only started to happen 20 years ago, and every single time a team wins it, the team doesn't win the World Cup, so fuck it. And the team was playing ugly as well. When you have like Robinho from, I think Luis Fabiano was with Robinho, and you have someone who is completely insane like Felipe Melo, what was going to happen? The Netherlands happened. And one thing that I remember from that game is when they lost, the players were all on the pitch crying and shit. And Dunga just turned his back and went to the dressing room. He didn't give a shit about these players. So that's when Filipão took over for the 2014 World Cup, I said, hey, Filipão is just as bad as Dunga. The thing is, there are two things. Filipão actually is a coach who has achieved stuff during his career, actual titles. And the second thing is, Filipão has this thing where the players love him. because he treats them as a family, and they do in this in return, you know. So that's the difference. Nobody likes Dunga, okay? If you see any player saying good things about Dunga, they're being hypocrites because they don't. No one does. And then 2014 happened. You know what happened? 7-1 happened. And after that, what they decide to do. So let's recap a little bit, okay? So after the 2014 World Cup, the president was José Maria Marim. But from 2014 to 2015, the DOJ thing and the FIFA raids and everything started to happen, and José Maria Marim was arrested in Switzerland, and of course he was no longer the president. And they elected some guy here to be in his place, like temporary. His name is Colonel Nunes, some old guy. And then they chose Del Nero. The thing is, as I mentioned before, the guy right now, he's wanted by the United States Department of Justice. So the Brazilian FA is an institution that its president cannot travel. He stays here hidden. You know, he goes to little things here and there because there is no extradition thing between the United States and Brazil. So as long as he doesn't travel, he's fine. So the 2015 Copa America, he didn't go. We lost. 2016, he didn't go as well. I'm not saying his presence would make a difference. It wouldn't. But just to show how this thing works. And now that I did this history about the coaches and how the FA and their focus on money has affected, let's talk about Brazilian football and why the FA and what they do and how they think does not only affect the national team, not only the yellow shirt, okay? It affects Brazilian football. So, the FA, as I told you, they do not care of anything else than money. So nowadays, the Brazilian FA earns around 100, no, so like 200 million reais. It's about 50 million euros, okay, each year. From that money, they spend 10% of it in the state federations, because Brazil has 26 states plus the federal district where the capital is, so we have 27 states. So they 10% of the money goes to that. 20% of the FA's money goes to marketing, because remember, they have to put on the TV that the supporting the national team shows you are a patriot. Okay, so they spend that money. And this number, please pay attention, 0.1% of what the FAIAs, the Football Association of Brazil earns, goes to the Brazilian League. Yes. So you have 10% going to the federations and 0.1% going to the actual Brazilian League. And when I say league because Brazil doesn't have a league. For Brazil doesn't have a league because league is supposed to be run by the clubs, to be managed by the clubs, and that isn't the case in Brazil. The league is managed by the FA. So the clubs, they really don't do anything, and that's ridiculous. Because the clubs, they own the product. The product is the football. The product are the players. And the clubs are so stupid in Brazil that they haven't fought the FA and say, no, we will run this ourselves. We will sell the product to the buyers, who are us, the viewers. They haven't done that. And why? Why is that? Because every single club is stupid? No. The thing is, remember I told you 10% of the money goes to the state federations. That's how the system works. So the FA gets all the money they can from the shirt from the national team. Then they pay the state federations huge amount of money because that amount of money, 20 million reais a year, that's a lot of money. And then over 80 to 85% of the teams in Brazil only survive because each state federation keeps them alive with that money. So the state federations keep most of the clubs alive, and the state federations only exist because the FA gives money to them. So most clubs are powerless against the FA because if that money goes away, they will no longer exist. Okay? But then you can say, oh, and the big clubs, they have the sponsorship, their fans will spend money, everything. Yeah, you're right. The bigger teams, they don't rely. If you take away the federation money from them, they will not cease to exist, but they will suffer greatly. And especially the clubs from São Paulo, they really need that money from the São Paulo State Federation greatly. And then comes the second player in that system, and that's Globo. Globo is the main TV channel, here in Brazil. It's one of the biggest in the world, and they basically own the league because they have bought the rights to broadcast the matches, and they are responsible for 80% of the changes in time slots. So not only did they buy it, they pay the clubs directly, but if they change their minds, they say, no, I'm going to change the time slot here. So fuck if the fans had planned, fuck if the fans had bought the tickets, they would change it. So you have the state federation, the FAs in the state federation from one side, when they handle most clubs, and then you have Globo owning the big clubs, because the big clubs, not only do they rely heavily on the money from the TV deals, they need to be on TV and they need Globo to help them get other sponsorships. So the thing about the Brazilian FA and the fact they are run by criminals, people who are, remember, the former president is right now in a jail, not in a jail, he's in house custody in New York City, and the current one cannot travel anywhere in the world because if he does, he'll be arrested. Okay, so it's not the fact they are run by crooks, it's the fact that these crooks have no interest in the quality of football. They will keep money with the Brazilian team no matter what, because Brazil hasn't played well since 1986. The fact they won 94 and the fact they won 2002, it has been due to players, and now we no longer have players. And why is that? Why doesn't Brazil have great players anymore? Do you think that the culture has changed? Why? You guys have any clues? The thing is, before, clubs still could have, most of the clubs had good academies. Most cities and places, they had places where children could play football. So, even though the clubs were poorer back then, a few years ago, decades ago, the good players, the good children, they would get to the clubs no matter what. But the thing is, now everything is globalized. So, for example, someone like Douglas Costa, who's one of the best players in the world right now, I myself love him. I have never seen this guy here. Never. Never. Coutinho, one of my favorite Brazilian players right now. Ever seen him either? They paid real, just a lot. They didn't play a lot here. They didn't. So what's happening? Before, for example, in 2002, the last time he won the World Cup, Ronaldo stayed here for a while. He didn't go to PSV when he was 19 years old. He went when he was 21 or 22. Rivaldo, he went to Deportivo later in his career. I think he was 23 or 24. Then he went to Barcelona and so on. And those were the main responsible for it. Now, when you look at Kaká, for instance, who was supposed to be the best player in 2006, he went quite young to Europe. Ronaldinho, the same, 2006. And now it's even worse. So players are leaving younger players that they start to appear in Europe and say, I haven't never seen this guy in Brazil. That's the main thing. Because now agents can find these players when they are really, really young and send to any club in Europe, and they won't be developed in Brazil. So that quality that you have, that thing about the Brazilian style and everything, it doesn't happen because the clubs don't play like that. All Brazilian clubs play like the national team you just saw play to Peru. Okay, with one or two or three exceptions, that's the rule. Long balls, shitty play, just defensive, choose defensive midfielder, it sucks. And that's the whole picture I'm trying to paint you. So the focus is in money. The Brazilian FA is acting in a way that they get all the money they can from the national team. They do not invest the money in developing players. They do not invest the money in an actual league. And the clubs who are hostage to both Globo, who is the biggest TV channel, and the FA, they do not come together and decide to put an end to it. So they remain with huge debts. They still play this awful competition. Just for you guys to know how fucked up Brazilian football is. Do you know the Brazilian league is happening right now? Do you think there's a possibility that in Europe one day we'll be playing the Spanish league while Messi is playing Copa America and Suarez is and Iniesta is playing the Euro? Because if the Spanish FA was just stupid as a Brazilian FA, that would be the case. That's happening right now. So, for example, Santos is fucked because their best player, Lucas Lima, he went there. He's in the Copa America right now, so he missed like 3 or 4 league matches. So that is insane. That you have an FA that's just so focused on money that they can rob players from the teams. The teams can't do anything about it, and they go to basically work for free for the FA, so the FA makes more money while the team is getting buck fucked here and losing. Just imagine that. And that's why we have the league that is the 18th most watched league in the world in terms of actual attendance in the stadiums. So you have like the second division from England and Germany, they have a better attendance than the Brazilian league. And even like the American league has a better attendance. So everything here is broken. And when people were asking me a few minutes ago, hey, who do you think should be the next Brazilian coach? It doesn't matter. That's the thing. I think people will say, no, they should get Tite because Tite is, he's modern and his football is different. Yeah, Tite, from what he uses and from what he's learned, is the best coach in Brazil right now. And if he did become the coach, most likely he would be more had more success in terms of playing a style that, even though it won't be beautiful, forget about beautiful football from any Brazilian coach right now, it won't happen, but at least it would be modern. So you would see pressing and you would see tactical variations that someone like Dunga would not ever present. But the fact of the matter is, to be honest with you, even if Pep Guardiola himself took over right now as Brazilian coach, me, who is a diehard Cruyffista and a huge Guardiolista, I still would not support the Brazilian team. Because doesn't matter who is going to be the coach and how the team plays, you cannot have an FA that is literally run by criminals. Remember, one is at jail, the former one is at jail, and the current one cannot travel because if he does, he'll be arrested. We cannot have that. So even though you can have Guardiola, you can have Tite, you can have Cuca, you can have Simeone, you can have whoever, enough, because the FA will keep getting richer and richer with this team, using these players, benefiting from the players, and Brazilian football will only get worse and worse and worse because you need an FA that cares about developing the football, not only about filling their pockets with money from the national team. So, if you don't develop young players here, if you don't allow and make the clubs develop players here, and if you don't bring, you know, uh, ideas from around the world, because right now Brazilian football has stagnated. Okay, Brazilian football has the same idea as the Italian Serie A from the 80s or the 90s. Okay, it's defensive, it's boring, it's long balls, and maybe individual talent. If you're lucky, they will save you. But Brazilian football is dying. Okay, just for you to know, clubs like Botafogo, Garrincha's club, it hasn't won the league since 1995, 21 years now, and they are hugely in debt, crippling that debt. Palmeiras, the team of Rivaldo, Edmundo, Ademir da Guia, the last time they won the title was in 1994. Grêmio, another huge team, also won the Libertadores, also won the Continental Cup, hasn't won it since 1996, 20 years. Those are big, big teams, and they don't win. They don't win. Internacional hasn't won a title since 1979. That's the team of Falcão, not the futsal player, for fuck's sake. Uh, so you see that, you keep seeing that. Brazilian football will keep just getting weaker and weaker. You keep seeing talent just bleeding away. And no matter the coach that comes, and I'm not joking, if Guardiola comes, we cannot have results trying to erase how damaging the FA is to Brazilian football. When I say I don't support the national team, and earlier today my godfather was saying to me during lunch, "Hey, it's unpatriotic. You're not being a patriot." I don't support Dunga myself because I want him gone, but after they get a good coach like Dunga, I will support the team. You have to think bigger, because you're saying that because you want to see results. You're saying that because you want to say, hey, Brazil won the sixth World Cup or whatever. Irrelevant. If Brazil wins the World Cup in 2018 and the same people are running the FA, if the clubs remain in debt and hostage to FA, if the Globo, the TV channel, continues to run everything, if things remain as they are, it won't matter the results, it won't matter who coaches the team. Brazilian football is doomed. So we have to turn this around. Enough is enough. Do I care who will be the next Brazil national team coach? I don't. The thing I care about is one day Brazilian football being run seriously in a way that looks at the future, in a way that looks to have younger players being developed, having an actual idea of football around the world, around the country. I know you can't demand one idea of football, but you can demand that people start to see the quality of football again, and not only get used to the shitty thing they are playing right now. And especially enough of corruption. Enough. The Brazilian FA, it was announced this week, literally is paying. They pay salaries to members of the Brazilian Congress, so those guys can defend the Brazilian FA in Congress whenever there's any attempt to look into the FA and to end corruption. That's how things are going in Brazil right now. The FA, who is deeply corrupt, pays salaries, actual salary, to congressmen, elected people, elected representatives, to be there and to defend in case the government try to to stop the corruption, and, it starts to starts to think of fixing things in the FA, and that is this desperate. So losing to Peru, going out of two Copa Americas in a row, and the 7-1 against Germany, that doesn't matter. If even if the results come and everything stays as they are, things will only get worse and worse. And one day, like 10 years from now, when we won't even get one Neymar during more than one decade, they won't be able to sustain everything. So the national team won't be sustainable when all the teams will be broke, and the corruption will have won. So stop caring about money. That's the thing about this FA. What has to change isn't the national team coach. What has to change is the FA. So as long as that doesn't happen, and I don't have to support a team that is only a way of them to make more and more money, to put on their own pockets, and to finance the things they do while Brazilian football is dying, I sincerely do not care.